Welcome back, everybody. Come take your seats. It is my privilege to welcome my son to share with us this morning. Zach has been, come on up, Zach. Zach has been at the Bethel School of Supernatural Ministry for 2 years. He's about to go for his 3rd year. And Zach is the one of the 3 kids that this is what he always talked about doing. Zach always planned on it. He always said that Andrew kind of stole his thunder by going first. But this was always Zach's dream to go and do. And it's been an amazing process to see that dream grow and change. And as a family, as a parent, we're incredibly proud of him, and I know as a house as well. So.
Hey guys.
Hi, Zach.
How's it going? One second. Okay. So, how long have I been back for? Like 2 months? 2-ish months? So, just going to start with a bit of an update on what I've been doing for the past 2 years and even the past 2 months with work and whatever. So those of you that don't know, which I think most of you do, but I've been at Bethel for the past 2 years. Just finished my 2nd year at their school of ministry. It was awesome, definitely the best year of my life so far. Learned a lot. So pretty much how the school works is you get put into groups called revival groups, and this year my pastor was a guy named Jordan DeMarco. So if you guys know Bethel music, Christine DeMarco is one of their singers, and it's her husband. So yeah, kind of could tag me in a post. Thanks.
Just
so,
a picture.
what?
Just a picture.
Is it? All pictures of me are good pictures. So I was in his group this year, and he really helped me through a lot of stuff throughout this year, just like processing a lot of the stuff I was dealing with earlier in the year. And in about February-ish, like when I came home for Christmas in December, I wasn't really planning on doing 3rd year. I was gonna stay home and work, and I wanted to get a new car and just buy stuff, because I haven't gotten to do that in a while and I like buying stuff. But then in end of January, beginning of February, I'm like, hey, maybe I should do 3rd year. And I prayed about it a lot, and was like, oh, who do I want to do 3rd year for? And then like a week later, I had a meeting with my pastor, and he just, like, I went in there thinking he was gonna, like, I needed like a lot of fixing and whatever, that I was like messed up, but it took 10 minutes. And he just like explained some stuff, and I'm like, oh, I'm fine. And then we just talked about sports and mission trips. And after that meeting, I went after him, I'm like, hey, I want an intern for you next year. He's like, oh, cool. And he's kind of, not awkward, but he's just kind of a goofy guy. So it was like, you could tell it kind of caught him off guard a bit. So then as the intern applications opened, I applied for them. He was the only one I applied for. I did what Bethel tells you not to do, and I only applied for one person. But it worked. Because I got the internship. So yeah, I was super stoked about that. Everyone who I'm interning with was in my group this year, so I know all of them. So it's really cool. We've all known each other for over a year now, and really excited to be doing the rest of the year with them and with Jordan and his family. That was that. So that's kind of what I've been doing for the past 2 years, and then the past 2 months I've been working my butt off. It's funny because for 3rd year the tuition's only like $800 American, and 1st and 2nd year was $4,500 each. So it's like I don't need nearly as much, but I'm working a lot more than I did the previous 2 summers. So it's good, but I'm like, that doesn't make sense. I need less money, but I'm working more than I ever have. So I'm working kind of full-time, pretty close to full-time at Top Crop I work out in the nursery with all the plants, so that's fun. I know about plants now. And then I also work at Canadian Tufo and Pizza. Bosses are here. So I work there a couple days a week. It was funny when my mom was helping me find a job starting in April. And I'm like, okay, what I don't want to do is I don't want to do retail, and I don't want to do laboring work. Guess what Top Crop is? It's retail and it's laboring work. So I'm like, but I really enjoy it. It's fun, and I get a sick tan doing it. Okay, now we're going to start on Jesus things. Because this is church. So what I really want to talk about, just for a bit, is just kind of what God's been working on in me in the past year to 2 years, and it's kind of like two different subjects, and one of them is trusting in Him, and the other one is surrendering to Him. So start with the trust part. When was it? About a couple months into my first year, I got this it was kind of a fear where I was going to run out of money. I was going to not have enough to pay for mission trips. I wasn't going to be able to pay my rent because most of you know that when I'm down there, I'm not allowed to work. So I have to do all my work during the summer and rely a lot on like monthly donations from friends and family. And I was just always concerned about, am I going to have enough money to buy groceries this week? Am I going to be able to pay rent next month? Oh, utilities are double of what they normally are. What the heck? It's like, I remember my dad saying to me, he's like, were you ever scared when you were little about like not having enough money or that we were poor or anything? And I was like, no. And he's like, well, where did this like fear come from? I'm like, no freaking idea. Because it's true, like when I was little and whatever, I was never worried about like my parents not being able to like support us or like pay for groceries. Like I never went hungry when I was little, obviously. So it just kind of came out of nowhere. And it even, like it was just kind of a process through all of first year and last summer. And I mean, I didn't have any reason to be worried about money. Like the summer before my first year, I was working a lot, and people would like, I think it was around August of 2015, I got home from a trip to Calgary, and I came home and there was a check for $3,000 for me. And I was like, oh, sweet. But then 2 weeks later, I'm like, oh, but I need money for this. And I'm like, I wasn't thinking that, oh, God just gave me $3,000 from somebody. He'll probably keep providing for me. He's not going to make me homeless or starve. I just have a couple verses on trusting God. Joshua 1:9. It's when Joshua was just pretty much given control over the Israelites. And he's kind of like freaking out, like, oh, what do I do? I don't know how to lead these people. And then Joshua 1:9 says, have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. So that was just kind of confirmation from God to Joshua that God knew what he was doing. He picked Joshua for a reason because of the leader that he was. And then Martin Luther King Jr. says, faith is taking the first step when you don't see the whole staircase. So I think that's sometimes having faith in God and having trust in God, it kind of feels like you're like blindfolded and you're like, I don't know where I'm going. And that, like, honestly, that is what it is like sometimes. You don't have all the answers. He does, but he doesn't want you to know them all right away, or else kind of defeat the purpose. And you just have to always be trusting in him that he's not gonna leave you in a corner to fend for yourself. Like, he's always there with you. Corey Ten Boom, I don't know who that is, but this quote's good. Says, never be afraid to trust an unknown future to a known God. So that really relates to how I was like last year, where I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea where money was coming from. And for the first bit, I wasn't trusting it to God. Like, I wasn't like giving it to God. I was just kind of like pulling it all on myself, like, oh, I'm going to be homeless, I'm going to be blah, 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 and I wasn't even close to that situation. I was overreacting just a tad. But yeah, that like kind of, and then I came back last summer, and I was like, hey, I want to have all my rent paid for before I leave, so I don't have to worry about that. I want to have my tuition paid for, so I don't have to worry about that. And I did. I got all that stuff taken care of before the summer through working and a lot of donations. And then I was like thinking, and then my first couple months of second year, I was never really super concerned about money. I mean, I always text my mom, like, did you put the money in for this week yet? Did you put the money in? And it's not, half of that is just because I like to bug her, because it's fun to see her reaction. But when I was in first year, it was, did you put the money in yet? Because I'm scared you're not going to, because I want to eat. But it's like, oh, like, yeah, it was a lot of overreactions. But when I preached a message similar to this when I went to Ireland in April, end of March, beginning of April, both. And I realized that between first and second year, I needed to raise $3,900 for missions. First year I went to Los Angeles, and that was $1,300. And second year I went to Ireland, which was $2,600. So that's $3,900 American. And guess how much I paid out of my own money?
None. Zero.
$15. So I did something, but it was like, I realized that on the trip, I was like, I only paid $15 of my own money, and it wasn't like I was even close, like I wasn't super, I mean, you guys can be the judge of this, you'd see my Facebook, but I don't like flood it with support me, support me, support me. I mean, there's people who are every 2 hours. I need $2,000 more dollars. I need $1,995 more dollars. It's like, and it works for some people, but it's not something I was like, I don't want to do that. But it's like, I never hit deadlines. Like I never got to a deadline for a payment and was missing like, oh, you owe us $700 in the next week, you're not going to be able to go on the trip. I always had all the money by like weeks before I needed it. And I realized that when I was on the trip, I'm like, what the heck? Like, I paid $15 and God has provided the other $3,885 American, so that's like closer to $6,000. Well, it wasn't the exchange, it's that bad. So it's been really cool to see how God has been providing for me, even when I didn't have like complete trust in Him to know that He knew what was best for me. It was like really shows His the grace that He has. He's like, okay, I know you're not perfect, but here I'm going to show you what I can do. And I saw what He could do, and He did a lot. So that's kind of the trust aspect of what I've been going through in the past 2 years. And the other part is surrendering. So I kind of see it as they're pretty similar in subject, especially for what I've experienced. So what does it look like to surrender? Before we can surrender to God, we need to be able to trust Him. You're not going to be able to give everything up to someone who you don't have a relationship with. You're not just going to go up to some random person on the street and be like, oh, I'm going to surrender everything to you. I'm going to give you everything and let you have control of it. It doesn't work like that because you don't know who you're giving it to. So that's why relationship is key when surrendering everything to God. Proverbs 3:5-6 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your path straight. More quotes, because I love quotes. Dwight L. Moody says, let God have your life. He can do more with it than you can. True. A.W. Tozer says, a man or woman who is wholly or joyously surrendered to Christ can't make a wrong choice. Any choice will be the right one.
That's good.
I know it's good.
That's
That's why I picked it. Billy Sunday says, conversion is a complete surrender to Jesus. It's a willingness to do what He wants you to do. So surrendering your life means following God's lead without knowing where He's sending you, waiting for God's timing without knowing when it'll come, expecting a miracle without knowing how God will provide, and trusting God's purpose without understanding the circumstances. To me, surrendered hearts show up. No, my mom tagged me in a post. Surrendered hearts show up best in relationships. You are not self-serving. You don't edge others out. You don't demand rights. To me, the healthiest relationship we can have is our relationship with God. Because if you're giving, even if you're not giving fully to God, He's always giving fully to you. Like I said before, He's not going to leave you like stranded in a corner by yourself, all alone. Sometimes it may feel like it, but it's not. You gotta have perspective. There's a song by John Pelser called "Beautiful Surrender," and the first couple lines of the chorus go, "Beautiful surrender is where I want to be, locked into your arms for all eternity. Come and take my hand, you can lead me where you please. That beautiful surrender is chasing after me." So I really think they nailed what surrender means in those couple of lines. Once you've experienced total surrender, it really turns into something beautiful. At first it may seem super difficult, and maybe it is. Maybe you need to surrender something you think you can't live without. That's why people like fast. It's like, oh, I can't live without food. It's like, how about you try to do it for a week? That's not for me. I fast when I sleep. Or else I didn't know.
You meant something.
But I mean, even like some people, like they fast their phones for a week, because when you get to the, I don't know where I'm going with this, but when you get to the point where you value something more than God, it's like, okay, you're putting more trust in that object, that thing, than you are in God. And that's when hopefully you realize that there's something not right. If you don't, hopefully you have other people around you who realize that there's something not right, and they like give you a little shot to the face. Not figuratively, not literally, if it works. I think one of the best examples of surrender, or one of my favorite examples of surrender in the Bible, is Genesis 22, verse 2, and it's where God tells Abraham to take his son, Isaac, up to the mountain and sacrifice him to God. Now, if you don't know the story, pretty much Isaac was like Abraham's miracle child. Like he was, I don't know how old, like 100 when he had him. So he really shouldn't have been having a kid at that age. And God was pretty much saying, oh, I gave him, now take him up and sacrifice him to me. And Abraham didn't even hesitate. He's like, hey, let's go. Isaac, get the wood. We're gonna go do this. I think there's no way Isaac didn't know what was happening. I mean, he was probably a pretty smart kid. And I really think he had as much faith as his father did. Now, in the end, obviously, the whole thing was kind of a test for Abraham to see like how much faith he had and how much trust he could have in God. And God saw that he would even surrender his only son that he loved arguably more than anything other than God himself. What did I surrender to him? My fear of not having enough money to get through the school year. I had a lot of anxiety over this past year, and around February was kind of the magic month. But I surrendered all that to him. I had a lot of unforgiveness in my life, and that was one thing that my pastor Jordan really helped with. One of the main things he actually speaks on is forgiveness. And I remember one day in school, I'm like, hey, freaking, this is dumb. How do I forgive this person? Blah, blah, blah. I think that was on like a Sunday. Monday in school, I see that my pastor's on the schedule to speak in front of the school. And he gets up on stage, he's like, hey, I'm gonna be talking about forgiveness. I'm like, no, crap, no, I was kidding, I don't want to hear this, blah, blah, blah. I was not happy for that day. Rabbit trail. I wasn't planning on talking about this, but so one of the things Jordan said was forgiveness is an occasional act, or is not an occasional act, it's a permanent attitude. So I think that you can't just like pick and choose when you forgive someone. You have to, like, if you're gonna forgive one person, you have to forgive another person. You don't necessarily have to trust them. Like if they do something to completely destroy your trust, the Bible doesn't say anything about trusting. You have to trust everyone. Like, I'm not gonna trust some random guy on the street. Like, I'm not gonna give him like, I don't know, $1,000 to be like, hold on to this for a while, and I'm gonna come back and get it in a random time. You're not gonna do that with a random person, or maybe you do, but I wouldn't. Pretty much, Jordan, he like told this story about, I don't want to steal his story, so I won't. But pretty much he had a lot of like bitterness over, like he completed all 3 years of Bethel, and like a lot of people, he was hoping to like finish all 3 years and like get asked to have a job there and whatever, and he didn't. Like he had a bunch of his friends did. I don't know if you guys know who Crozier is. He was a second-year pastor. Now he's head of their young adults group. He got offered a job when he was as a second-year Bible pastor when he was my age, and he's one of Jordan's best friends. And Jordan, he was saying he went to study theology at Simpson University, which is a university in Reading. And he was sitting in class one day, just like miserable and really not happy. And God spoke to him like in class, and he's like, a happy heart is one of thankfulness and celebration. And he told him, he's like, I want you to say that out loud. And he's like in the middle of a lecture in class, and he's like, no, I'm not gonna do that. A couple minutes go by, he's like, God's like, a happy heart is one of thankfulness and celebration. He's like, I'm not gonna say it, what the heck, go away. And then finally, he's like, happy heart is one of thankfulness and celebration. He's like, no, say it louder. And he just like screams it out in class. Everyone like looks at him. He's like, he like runs away, runs out of class. And yeah, I don't want to dig into his story too much because it's his and it's not mine to share. But one of the things he told us in his sermon at school was like he said he wanted us to like close our eyes and like get like pictures of all the people who we have unforgiveness towards, and as their kind of like faces are like floating by, it's like say to them, I forgive you and I release you of my bitterness. And I was like, I had some people like in my head like, oh, I forgive you and I release you of my bitterness, and it like didn't feel like it was genuine. I'm like, okay, what the heck? And then like during worship, like Jordan spoke and then we had worship. So the whole time in worship, I'm just like sitting on the floor, like trying to forgive people. And this was actually the day before I had my meeting with Jordan about where I thought I was a mess and that I thought I needed fixing. And I'm like trying. One of my best friends is like, Zach, are you okay? I'm like, I don't know. I don't really know what's happening. And I was trying. I was like, what's the quote? I forgive you and I release you of all my bitterness. And like said it like probably 50 times, and it wasn't working. Like you say it, but you know, it doesn't. Like it didn't feel like I meant it, which is kind of weird because it's like you think I'd want to mean it, which I did, but it wasn't working. So then we had, I think Chris spoke next, and I was just like not in the mood. I was just like not happy. I was like staring angrily into the corner, like I want to forgive them, but I can't. Next day I went home, or that night I went home. I was like, yeah, that was not a great afternoon for me. But the next day I had my meeting with Jordan. He's like, oh, how's it going? How's life? I'm like, oh, it sucks, blah, blah, blah. Explained to him a bunch of stuff. He's like, okay, so whenever I have issues with unforgiveness, I just think to myself, I'm like, whoops. He's like, I just think to myself, how did Jesus forgive the world for killing him? I was like, what? It's like, the world literally stuck Jesus on a cross, nailed him to the cross, and hung him up, and he's like, nah, it's cool, forgive you. I'm actually going to die for all of you so that I don't have to, so that you don't have to sacrifice animals and stuff anymore. Like, it's a lot easier process to accept Jesus now. than it was back then. So yeah, that's what Jordan told me. I don't know how I got there. I was talking about surrender. Oh yeah, because I surrendered my unforgiveness to Jesus, and it worked. Because now I've been since that meeting with Jordan, I've been, I don't know, one of the happiest I've been in a long time, and it's just been a really great, however many months that is, 7 months, 8 months. And even like when I'm working, like the first 3 weeks at Top Crop was brutal on my body. Because I was like out of shape and I was not used to, I had worked in 9 months and I'm like, oh, it's hard, it's hot. And that wasn't even that hot. There was only like 27 then and now it's 36. It's brutal. I don't like the heat. But yeah, so that's just kind of what I've been going through the past 2 years, and especially the last 4 or 5 months. So I just have something, if you guys want to stand, we're going to do a little repeat after me, because those are cool. So this is like a prayer of complete surrender to God. So just repeat after me. I lay my life at your feet, and I'll offer you all that I am. May my feet follow your leading. May my mind be renewed with your truth. May my heart be full of your grace. May my words be full of your wisdom. May my mind be full of your truth. May my dreams be full of your vision. And my soul filled with your peace. I lay my life at your feet and offer you all that I am. Ta-da! Thanks, guys.